This story is called A Mistletoe Wand Balder, the beautiful god. Balder, the son of Odin and Frigg, was the most beautiful of all the gods, and everybody loved him. They loved him for his golden hair, his glowing complexion, and most of all for his sweet disposition. Surrounded by all this admiration, Balder ought to have been happy, but he was not, because his nights were plagued by dreams so hideous that he dreaded sleep. His dreams were of dark, formless beings which surrounded him in a place of shadows, cold beyond imagining. He believed the dreams foreshadowed his death. The gods and goddesses gathered to discuss the meaning of Balder's nightmares. Why, they wondered, should such a fearsome spectre haunt a man as kind and gentle as their beloved Balder? They talked and talked, but nobody could fathom the meaning of the dreams. Presently Odin said, "Enough of this. I'll go to Niflheim and seek an explanation there." Odin mounted 8-legged Sleipnir and rode till he reached the hall of Hel, keeper of the dead. Striding in, he was amazed to see the place decked out as though for a celebration. He was gazing about him when Hel herself appeared. Her face and body were those of a living woman, but her thighs, legs, and feet were those of a rotting corpse. Odin looked at her. "Why is your hall decked out like this? Are you expecting someone important?" Hel nodded. "I expect Balder," she said. "But Balder is both beautiful and popular," said Odin. "Why should he die? Who would want to harm him?" "Balder will die at the hands of his blind brother Hodder," said Hel. This seemed impossible to Odin, but Hel would say no more, so he mounted Sleipnir and rode back to Asgard with a heavy heart. When they heard Odin's news, the gods and goddesses were distraught. They began listing the ways that a man might die. By water, fire, iron, stone, and so forth. There must be a way to protect Balder from every sort of death, if only they could think how to go about it. Frigg, Balder's mother, said, "I know. I'll make everything on earth swear an oath not to harm my son. I'll go to iron, fire, water and stone. I'll go to wood and bone, famine and disease. By the time I finish, there'll be nothing on earth that can hurt Balder." So off went Frigg, and nothing could resist her sweet petitioning. Every creature in the world and every substance and every sort of disease swore a solemn oath never to harm Balder. The goddess returned to Asgard well pleased, and when she told the gods and goddesses, they were much relieved. Balder felt a lot better too. In fact, he felt so great he invented a game. In this game he would stand perfectly still while the inhabitants of Asgard took turns chucking an assortment of missiles at him. Stones, sticks, lumps of iron, the odd dwarf. It didn't matter what. Everything simply bounced off him without harming him. He didn't feel a thing. One day, Loki passed by as a game of bounce stuff off Balder was in progress. He stopped to watch. Everybody seemed to be having a great time, laughing and falling about. Now Loki wasn't keen on happiness. Strife and suffering were more in his line. He watched for a while, and as he watched, an idea came to him. He went off and found a quiet spot, and there he changed his shape. Loki was now a smelly old woman with a hairy top lip. Thus disguised, he hobbled off to Frigg's hall. The goddess was none too pleased when this ragged crone shuffled in, but she was too polite to kick her out. "What do you want, old woman?" she asked. "I want nothing," Loki replied. "I came from Midgard to see the wonders of Asgard, but all I've seen so far is a gang of gods pelting some poor young man with stones. Killing him, they were. Didn't expect to see stuff like that in the realm of the gods." Frigg chuckled. "They weren't killing him, old woman. He's my son, and nothing on earth can hurt him. What you saw is just a game they play." The crone's toothless mouth fell open. "You say nothing can hurt him? Nothing at all?" "Not a thing." "What if a mountain fell on his head?" "It wouldn't harm him." "Well, suppose someone swiped his head off with a really keen sword?" "They couldn't. The sword would just bounce off." "You don't say." The old woman shook her head. "That's powerful magic. Who did that?" "I did," boasted Frigg. "I travelled to every corner of the 9 worlds, and everything swore an oath never to hurt Balder." "Everything? Every single thing? You absolutely sure?" "Well," Frigg smiled, "there is one small mistletoe plant in Valhalla. I didn't bother asking it to swear. It's too frail to harm anyone." The old woman treated the goddess to a toothless smile. "Well, thank you for putting up with an nosy old woman. I'll be off now." "Goodbye then," said Frigg. "Enjoy the rest of your visit." As soon as he was alone, Loki resumed his own shape and hurried off to Valhalla to look for the mistletoe plant. He found it growing on an oak tree, as mistletoe does, and wrenched it free. Examining the plant, he saw that one of its twigs was dead straight and fairly thick. It was about as long as his forearm. He tore this twig loose and threw away the rest of the plant. Then he set off towards the great hall, Gladsheim, where he'd seen the game in progress. It was still on when Loki got there. On the way, he'd whittled one end of the mistletoe wand to a sharp point. He sidled up and joined the happy spectators. Looking around, Loki spotted Balder's blind brother Hodder standing to one side. He worked his way over, poked the lad in the ribs and cried, "Now then, Hodder," so loudly that Hodder jumped. "Oh," he cried, "it's Loki, isn't it?" "Sure is," chuckled the trickster. "Listen, why aren't you joining in the fun?" Hodder shrugged. How can I? I can't see my brother, let alone throw things at him. And anyway, I have nothing to throw. You could throw this, murmured Loki, placing the mistletoe wand in the blind god's hand. It's just a twig, but at least you'll have had a go. But how am I to know where? I'll stand behind you and guide your arm, said Loki. Come on. He led Hodder forward. They had to wait because gods were lining up to hurl things at Balder. Gradually they shuffled forward till it was their turn. Now, Hodder, murmured Loki. Your brother's in front of you, and a touch to the left, about 15 paces away. Raise the wand like a dart, that's it. Now, if I turn you just a fraction like this, that's it. Now, throw. Hodder's arm was strong. Loki's aim was true. The wand whistled through the air, struck Balder in the middle of his chest, and passed clean through him. For a moment, Balder continued to stand. There was a startled look on his face. Then, without uttering a sound, he pitched forward and fell dead to the ground. The spectators stood dumbfounded. The participants gaped. Nobody spoke. Hodder, sensing something wrong, turned his head from side to side. What is it? He stammered. What's happening? He felt behind him for Loki, but Loki had gone.